There is no easy fix for the Cincinnati Reds rotation right now.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Jeff Carr, and on today's Locked On Reds podcast, a little bit later on, we will take a glimpse at the challenge that follows today's game as the Reds get ready to hit the road. In just a few minutes, I want to tell you why I believe that Wednesday night's egg laid by the Reds lineup is the exception now, not the rule. But we will begin with the Reds starting rotation that now, after the early exit from Brandon Williamson on Wednesday night, looks to be in shambles at this point. I mean, we're probably looking at some form of a bullpen game the next turn in the rotation that would have been Brandon Williamson's turn, which will be next Monday in Chicago. Here's why. He left after the third inning with shoulder fatigue in his throwing shoulder. In fact, this was something that Tito wasn't ready to do. It's not as if there were signs on the mound or anything like that, other than the fact that his control still wasn't there. Location was still very tough and very inconsistent for Brandon Williamson on Wednesday night. But it was a discussion that Tito had with Brandon Williamson in the dugout that really keyed all of this, because he was talking with him and he could tell that something wasn't right. In fact, they are doing this to a point that he's having an MRI, and depending on when you're listening to this Thursday morning, he may have already had it. And there will be an update on Thursday as to what they're going to do moving forward. But quite frankly, pitchers and MRIs don't usually follow up with, they're fine, he'll make his next start. Don't usually hear that. So I'm expecting that the Reds are going to be without Brandon Williamson. What I found interesting in the moment, at least during Wednesday night's game, is that had it not been for the conversation, Tito was ready to run him back out there in the fourth inning.
Yeah, I think we would have, just because, yeah, I think so. But when you start talking to a guy and they start talking like that, it's hard to ever send somebody back out like that.
Albeit he paused there, right? Like he was asked the question and he was like, yeah. That's never a sure thing. And he's probably thinking back to that moment. But at the same time, that felt like I didn't love what he was doing, but I wasn't going to tax the bullpen, which, by the way, kudos to Luis May and Jose Franco, because they were able to cover enough to the point that there really was no high leverage guy used in this horrific loss that the Reds endured at the hands of the Colorado Rockies on Wednesday night. And we'll get to the lineup part of this loss in just a minute, and why I don't think it's that big of a deal. But the pitching side of things was from the Brandon Williamson aspect. Brandon Williamson has been wholly inconsistent this year. First couple of starts of the season looked okay, but it's not as if he was like striking out an exponential number of people and walking nobody. It was just he was able to mitigate the walks. He was able to mitigate the damage from the base runners. He's not been able to do that here recently because it's just been base runner after base runner after base runner. There was a lot of hard contact in this game off of him, and he had thrown a ton of pitches in those 3 innings as well. So, all right, if he isn't hurt, you run him back out for the fourth inning. Does he even finish the fourth inning at that point? My point being, Brandon Williamson has not been a guy that I'm like, yes, every fifth day they have to throw him out there. I was kind of looking at this start as being okay, if you don't go now, if Williamson didn't shove in this start, I think he would need to be evaluated. The shoulder fatigue thing just kind of seems like an exclamation point on that take right now, because it seems like they're going to get an MRI. He's probably going to miss some time. They're going to shut him down and rest it and all that other stuff. But when it comes to Brandon Williamson, he shouldn't even be here. He is here out of necessity. And I'm not saying that because he doesn't deserve it. He had a nice spring, and he is a good pitcher. It's just right now where he is in his rehab process, that's not something that he is normally expected to do, that any other pitcher is normally expected to do. He's coming back from Tommy John surgery. There should be a long runway, and a long rehab process in the minor leagues to get you set for the majors. He didn't have that. He didn't pitch at all last year in any sort of rehab bit. His rehab outings, as it were out in Arizona during spring training. Then they said, come on, kid. We don't have Nick Lodolo and we don't have Hunter Green. We need you. And this is what happens because he just was not ready. He was supposed to be able to do this all at AAA and kind of ease into it, and he could not do that. So I feel for him, but I'm also glad that, hopefully he's going to be able to take a little bit of a respite here. The problem lies with the team because now there's a hole in the rotation. And while the answer makes sense logistically, I think we have to ask the question of how this is going to be implemented because Chase Petty pitched on Wednesday night for Louisville in Omaha. This lines him up to start on Monday. Chase Petty could be the starter for the Reds on Monday. Chase Petty should not be asked to throw 6 innings on Monday. Chase Petty should throw somewhere between 3 and 4 innings. This should be a bullpen game plus on Monday, if this is indeed what the Reds do. Now, the other option with this is to skip the next minor league rehab start that you had for Nick Lodolo and have Nick Lodolo pitch on Monday, albeit, I would say, with the same philosophy, 3 or 4 innings. If you're really efficient, maybe 4 innings. And I say really efficient, 4 innings. Keep in mind, Chase Petty is a little bit stretched out, but he is, fresh off of a little bit of an IL appearance down in AAA. He missed a couple of weeks, had a start against Iowa on the 23rd where he did pitch in 6 innings, and then last night he threw 2 1/3, and he was pulled. He threw 63 pitches in 2 1/3 innings. So going into the 3rd inning, he threw 63 pitches. So it's not as if he threw a tiny amount of pitches or anything like that. It's just I think they probably got word from the big league club at that point that, hey, we're probably going to need him on Monday. Just go ahead and pull him, and he'll be fine. But I do not believe for a moment, unless he is just absolutely mowing down. And by the way, he's going to be pitching in Wrigley Field against the Chicago Cubs. We continue to see the Reds doing Chase Petty no favors here. But unless he is just mowing down the Chicago Cubs lineup, I see no reason for this to go any more than 4 innings. Because at that point, you're messing with fire. I think he gets maybe a second time through the order, maybe. There's absolutely no realm of reality where the Reds should be expecting 3 times through the order from Chase Petty on Monday. And I would say that if it's Nick Lodolo as well. Because, yes, Nick Lodolo threw on Sunday, and he didn't experience any issues with the blister. The problem was they had a strategic lack of breaking balls. They did not put the stress on the finger that they typically do. And we all know, and it was interesting because they made it seem as though it was some revelation in the press availability for Nick Lodolo that, oh yeah, it's the breaking ball that causes the blister on his finger. We all knew that. we're all fine here now. How are you? But I think we need to see him throw more of the breaking balls in a minor league game. So my expectation is going to be Chase Petty on Monday. And Chase Petty better only throw 3 or 4 innings, 2 times through the order max. But that just underscores the problems here. And quite frankly, I will feel so much better about the rotation if Andrew Abbott pitches well against the Rockies here on Thursday. Depending on when you're listening to this, that might have already happened. Hopefully he did. But the Reds starting rotation, man, it's in shambles right now. The Reds gotta work through this. They gotta kind of survive and get some guys back because it's looking rough a little bit in this rotation. But coming up next, that stinker that the Reds lineup just put out there against the Rockies on Wednesday night, that's the exception now, not the rule. It's baseball season, and you can trade every game over on Kalshi, whether it's the day's game or you're looking at season-long win totals. Kalshi has all of those markets available to you. In fact, right now, the odds of the Reds winning 85 or more ball games this season are at 44%. That means if you make a $100 trade on the Reds to win 85 or more ball games, the payout is at $218. And that just feels like free money. I don't know why people don't think the Reds are just going to win. That's all they've done to start the season. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use code LOCKEDON to get $10 when you trade 10. Kalshi. Kalshi. Trade on anything. 18 and older only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory. You got to go check out the Everydayer Club. Go to lockdownreds.supercast.com. Learn more about it. $5 a month, $50 for the whole year. You get an ad-free podcast feed. Don't have to listen to any ads whatsoever on the audio side. And you get to join a Discord group chat with myself, Steve, Tim Daniel, and every other MLB podcast host for the Locked On Network. You get to trash talk to other Locked On fans. It's great. Got to check out the Everydayer Club. Again, lockdownreds.supercast.com, or you can just click on the link that's down in the show description below. All right, this Reds lineup is for real improving. Like and if you're watching here on YouTube, you can see it. If you're listening on your favorite podcast app, I wrote in the rundown, I said, you can trust the Reds lineup. I believe it. And I think it's a funny thing to say after they just basically got shut out. I mean, Will Benson hit a 2-run home run in the 9th inning off a former Red relief pitcher, Jimmy Herget, to break the shutout, which that was fun. But largely, they were pretty bad on Wednesday night. And I think they were due for a bad day. Because overall, this Reds lineup has been pretty good. We've really begun to see the improvements in a lot of different dudes. Over the last week or so, you can kind of start to see the sample size forming for guys like TJ Friedl, Matt McClain. You're seeing it form for Spencer Steer. All of these guys have underlying things that are pointing to this. Because one of the biggest things that I've learned about this team in the first month is that they are for real, because the quality of contact is phenomenal. In fact, the Reds are getting the barrels. They're just not getting the luck yet. The Reds rank 4th in Major League Baseball in barrels per plate appearance, which is the typical stat. If you hear somebody talk about barrels, they're talking about barrels per plate appearance. There's another way to talk about barrels, which is barrels per batted ball event, but then you're getting granular. Basically, however many times a guy steps up to the bat, what's the percentage of time he gets a barrel? That's what we want to know. Only the Dodgers, Yankees, and Braves outpace the Reds in this category. And it's by a decimal point. It's not by a whole percentage point. The Reds have done really well with this. In fact, Sal Stewart, Elly de la Cruz, Spencer Steer, and Ke'Bryan Hayes all rank within the top 30 Major League hitters that have all qualified, in the top 30 in barrels. Guys are hitting the ball. Both Elly and Tyler Stephenson rank in the top 15 of Major League Baseball in average exit velocity. And then you couple all this, these quality of contact metrics and things like that. The Reds are hitting the ball well. Numbers tell you that. It's just you're not finding grass because the Reds continue to rank dead last in Major League Baseball in batting average on balls in play. Mark it off your bingo card. I said it. There you go. But it's true. This is a factor. I understand for people that want to say, well, Jeff, how much does it really matter? It really matters. As of right now, every other team in Major League Baseball is getting luckier than the Reds. In fact, the Reds right now are facing the luckiest team in Major League Baseball. The Rockies have a BABIP of 319. The Reds have a BABIP of 258. League average is right around 290. I'd say right now the Reds are 30 points below that number. It's 288 to 290, kind of fluctuates a little bit early on in the season. But like last year, it was 288 for the entire season. And generally, it's around 290. So the fact that the Reds are still that low, but they're seeing really good quality of contact is very telling. And for me, the microcosm of it all is a guy that we talked about before the Rockies series as a guy to kind of mark down, like a guy who could break out and go crazy. And I'm going to say it again, and if it's not today, it's going to happen when they hit the road here soon. Tyler Stephenson is going to break out. Tyler Stephenson, like I mentioned, he's with Elly in the top 15 of every single major league hitter right now. Top 15 of average exit velocity. He has a great hard hit rate, which is 95 miles an hour off the bat or more. And that's what a hard hit ball is. So he's doing all of these things. It's just there's two things that are happening. It's not finding grass. Tyler Stephenson's BABIP is 209. That's really low. And he has a ridiculous 8% homer to fly ball ratio. So for every fly ball he hits, only 8% of them are home runs. And you say, well, Jeff, that probably just means he's hitting bad fly balls and weak fly balls. I just told you. His quality of contact is good, and, at least according to Baseball Savant, his swing speed is over a mile an hour faster this year than it was last year. Tyler Stephenson knows that this is a massive year for him individually, and we talked about it before the season even began, but this is the year that he needs to go because he's about to be a free agent, and he wants to look lucrative to the next team. If it's not going to be the Reds, and I find that highly unlikely that he sticks here now. But whoever he's going to next, he wants to really rake this year to set up that big contract. Because as it stands, everybody kind of knows defensively as a catcher, he's pretty good at blocking, not really good with the run game. The framing isn't there. But honestly, framing might be kind of undervalued now with ABS anyway. But all of that being said, he's just a very fine, not great defensive catcher. His value is with his bat. And he is showing that he's ready to break out. He just hasn't seen the luck yet. He's got to be ready when the luck happens. For anybody that knows that reference, you're awesome. But, I mean, Tyler Stephenson is ready to break out. I still find this pretty overarching for the Reds as a whole. And I know I mentioned that Ke'Bryan Hayes is up there in the barrels. He is. He's in the top 30 in barrel percentage in Major League Baseball. Doesn't mean I think that he's going to go crazy and hit 300 all of a sudden, but we have seen him double his batting average over the last week. That's not saying much because it was that low, but I'm just telling you, we're starting to see him go a little bit. And honestly, if he just hits 210, 220, then he's fine where he is at the bottom of the lineup. But overall, when you look at what the Reds lineup has done so far this year, we've seen them come back from crazy deficits. We've seen them mash at crazy rates. I don't think all of that is just some sort of mirage. And then what happened on Wednesday night is what we really need to get ready for the rest of the year. As I'm going to kind of lay out here in just a minute how the Reds fared at PNC Park and Wrigley Field last year, they didn't score a whole lot. I expect that to change because of how they're hitting the ball. They're just not getting the results right now. And I think if they were getting overly lucky, like, and this is the converse to my argument right now, if their batting average on balls in play was much higher and their quality of contact was much lower, then we'd be singing a different tune. But what I'm telling you is the quality of contact is high and the luck is low. And usually the luck comes up whenever you're hitting the ball as well as the Reds are. Coming up next, we're going to take a peek at two division rivals on a tough upcoming road trip for the Redlegs. As some of you may know, my other job, aside from hosting Locked On Reds, has to do with Locked On MLB. I manage the channel, all of the different shows for all the different teams. And I mean, when you're managing that many shows, sometimes the work just piles up on you. And every so often there is an opening that I've got to fill. Indeed is the way that we fill it, because we use Indeed sponsored jobs to really find that right candidate. And listeners of today's show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status that it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Look, us guys don't really like talking about health stuff and waiting in waiting rooms, getting in lines in the pharmacy and all this other. That just does not sound like a good time, but you've still got to take care of all this stuff. HIMSS understands that, and they've offered a good process to go through and get this all taken care of, because they connect you with licensed healthcare providers, giving you access to legitimate treatments for things like hair loss, weight loss, and erectile dysfunction, all from the comfort of your own home. You don't have to go out and worry about all that stuff and be in public and feel all vulnerable. You know, you can do this privately through HIMSS. To get simple online access to personalized, affordable care for ED, hair loss, and weight loss, and more, visit HIMSS.com/LockedOnMLB. That's HIMSS.com/LockedOnMLB for your free online visit today. HIMSS.com/LockedOnMLB. Prescription required. See website for details and important safety information. Sildenafil is the generic version of Viagra. Viagra is a registered trademark of Viatris Specialty LLC. HIMSS is not affiliated with or endorsed by Viatris. I encourage you to keep the conversation going with me after the show is over. You can follow me at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs over on X, or also on TikTok. And you can follow Steve as well over on X at S Offenbaker with 2 Fs. And then you can follow the show everywhere on social media at Locked On Reds. So the Reds have 7 games coming up. They're in the midst of 13 games in 13 days, and 7 of these games are about to be on the road against division opponents. And we're pretty much talking about, I still have a hard time saying that the Brewers are not up at the top of the division, but the Pirates have certainly entered into the chat when it comes to teams you got to beat. And I'm not just saying teams you got to just go crazy on because they're bad. The Pirates are good now. And they're going to have a say in who wins this NL Central this year. And the Reds are about to play 3 games this weekend with them, 4 games in Chicago to begin next week. This road trip is tough right now for the Reds. As I mentioned, that the starting rotation is kind of in a tough spot. But at the same time, they are going to get the bulk of the Cubs rotation while they still kind of miss out on the bulk of the Pirates rotation. They kind of get lucky there. But I will say this, they will see Braxton Ashcraft at some point in Pittsburgh. But kind of overall, looking at how the Reds fared last season, I mean, we're talking about now they're getting into some NL Central games. They only played 3 so far this year. They faced Pittsburgh at Great American, and they went 1-2. But last year in Pittsburgh, they were 3-4. And last year in Chicago, they were 3-3. So you get out of these road games around the 500 mark, and it kind of feels like that's what you should expect. But if the Reds are going to win the division, they've got to be 4-3, because since, you play 13 in division games against your division rivals, in 1 year you'll play 7 on the road and 6 at home. The next year you'll play 6 on the road, 7 at home. Flip it, whatever. Yeah. So they played 7 in Pittsburgh last year. They'll play 6 in Pittsburgh this year. Conversely, they'll play 7 in Chicago this year, with the bulk of that coming at the beginning of next week. And that's going to be key, because last year, the Reds actually outscored the Pirates despite going 3-4. They scored 26 runs, and they only allowed 24 runs to the Pirates. I I noted this. I thought it was a little bit trivial. I don't necessarily know how big of a deal it is, but the Reds out-homered the Pirates at PNC Park 3-2. Yeah. 7 games, and the Reds and Pirates combined for 5 home runs. These lineups are much different this year. I expect that number to be higher. But when you look at this series for the Redlegs, they're going to have Brady Singer, Rhett Lauder, and Chase Burns, and you'll likely see Braxton Ashcraft in the finale for the Pirates, and probably Carmen Mlodzinski in one of these games, but they also just ran a bullpen game themselves on Monday, did the Pirates. So there's a possibility that the Pirates run a bullpen game on Friday. Or, at the very least, we see Wilbur Dotel, a youngster that they just called up this year, pitch. He pitched 4 innings in that bullpen game. Not the starter. They started with a different guy. But Wilbur Dotel made up the majority of that game. Maybe he starts for them. But they have not announced their starters for this series while the Reds have. So just kind of looking at that, the key thing to note is that Paul Skeens is pitching today, Thursday, against the Cardinals. The Pirates are actually trying to avoid being mopped by the Cardinals. And for those not in the know, mopped is when you get swept in a 4-game series. And the Pirates are a bit of a losing streak right now. They're a 4-game losing streak. They're going to try to avoid a 5-game losing streak. So the Reds might actually be getting the Pirates at a decent time here, especially for the fact you won't see Paul Skeens at PNC Park, and you won't see Bubba Chandler either. But you will see Braxton Ashcraft on Sunday, so it kind of feels like you got to make your hay in the first 2 games. Chase Burns is going to pitch on Sunday, which that means that's going to be a fun pitching matchup. Chase Burns against Braxton Ashcraft is going to be a lot of fun to watch. But Brady Singer and Rhett Lauder are going to need to shove for the Redlegs on Friday and Saturday. And something else to note, too, with the Reds lineup. Sal Stewart did not play at PNC Park last year. Elly de la Cruz did, and he did not like it. He had 28 at-bats at PNC Park last season. He had a .576 OPS. For reference, his slugging percentage right now is pretty much just as high as his entire on-base plus slugging percentage last year at PNC Park. So hopefully we continue to see him mash and not fall into some sort of stupor that PNC sort of has some sort of spell on him or something like that. But then switching gears to Chicago, I mentioned that the Reds outscored the Pirates in that 7-game series in Pittsburgh last year, split, of course, in 2. In the 6 games that they played at Wrigley, the Cubs outscored them 20-18. But, oddly enough, they both combined for 12 homers. Reds and Cubs split that. As much as we say that the Cubs lineup is just so much better than the Reds lineup, last year especially, the Cubs and Reds had the same amount of home runs in their head-to-head matchups at Wrigley Field. When it comes to this 4-game series, Chicago is getting lucky because they won't see Chase Burns. The Reds, it depends on how much you buy his start to the season. The Reds won't see Matthew Boyd. Matthew Boyd, of course, pitched really well last year for the Cubs. He has pitched really poorly to begin this season. But he will be the one pitcher of the Cubs rotation that the Reds miss. The Reds will see Shota Imanaga, they'll see Edward Cabrera, they'll see Jameson Taillon. And then they had a bullpen day as well. They had an interesting bullpen day, and I'd kind of like to see if the Reds could replicate something like this. They lost to the Dodgers, but in their bullpen game, they had just 3 pitchers pitch. They had one guy go 3 1/3, one guy go 2 1/3, another guy go 2 2/3. Or however that works out, 2 1/3. Yeah, the math worked out. They had 3 guys pitch. Leave it at that. I won't try to do any more math here. But suffice it to say, the Reds are going to get their best swing right now because Matthew Boyd isn't having the best start to the season. And I would think that you see a petty / bullpen day on Monday for the Reds. Then you'll see Andrew Abbott on Tuesday, Brady Singer on Wednesday, and Rhett Lauder for Thursday. So it's going to be key because the Reds have looked good to begin this season. and they've played exactly 3 division games. We said that that's the most important thing this year is that they win the division by winning the division. You beat your division rivals. Right now, they're not doing that. You need to make some hay here in these next 7 games after the Rockies series ends, because you're on the road for all 7 of these. A tough road trip between division rivals where the Pirates are hungry. Cubs are a little bit hungry too because they had that nice winning streak get snapped by the Dodgers, and then they started to win a little bit more. Cubs are off today, so if the Reds can get a win against the Rockies, which hopefully by this point, depending on when you're listening to this, they have, then they will have gained that half game. There'll be a full game ahead of the Cubs heading into this weekend in PNC. Now, it's a little early to the scoreboard watch, but still, like, this is where the Reds need to build. They've been building with these interleague series and hopefully they can finish off this Rockies series with a series win and just keep building. But at some point, you've got to win these divisional matchups too. You cannot build and then go less than 500 against your division rivals and hope to win your division. It's just not going to work out that way. So it's going to be a key thing for the Reds to go this next week. But that's going to do it for us here today. Thanks for tuning into the Locked On Reds podcast. Coming up on tomorrow's show, Steve will return with me. We'll break down the final game of the Rockies series, and we will give you our picks for the big weekends in PNC and get you set for a really fun matchup with the Buccos. Make sure that you subscribe and follow Locked On Reds wherever you get your podcasts. We're on everything out there. Go check out the Everydayer Club, lockedonreds.supercast.com. $5 a month, $50 for the whole year. Get your ad-free feed on your audio app, and you get group chat and so much more. Link is in the description of today's episode. But that's going to do it here for us. Make sure you check out Locked On MLB. We got you covered so many different angles around the league as a whole every single day. Make sure you go check them out. But as for Steve and myself, we will be Locked On Reds every single day.